everybody, lovers of the Media Beat and those who are yet to fall in love with the Media Beat, welcome. It's episode 93, and as I sit here with Maureen and Claire virtually, we're basking in a wonderful lunch we had yesterday deep in the heart of Soho in London to celebrate our fourth anniversary, and it was a wonderful meal. Wonderful chat, lots of laughs, lots of memories, lots of patting ourselves on the back actually, but it was a very memorable meal and I enjoyed it immensely, and we got free cabbage as well. Perhaps more on that later, but any meal that comes with free cabbage has got to be a good meal. But not only that, to add to the excitement, we've got a fantastic deep dive coming up which I'm particularly interested in. We're going to be talking about the Paramount WBD merger, of course, as we're contractually obliged to. An update on microdramas, as not in the microdrama that is the Media Beat, but microdramas generally. OpenAI news. We're going to be talking about EA, the NFL, Donald Trump, BTS, all sorts of stuff. But the highlight of the first third is the first third, which is going to be the deep dive, and it's about a subject that I love, my kids love, and it's music. And music publishing and how it has changed and revolutionized over recent years, which means that young people have access to a wonderful catalogue of music going back 50, 60 years. And so have no snobbery about what time frame that the music comes from, which is one of the most wonderful things to happen in the post-digital world. Anyway, forget what I think about it. Let's go to our experts. We're going to start with Claire. Claire, can't wait for this one. Take us through the history of music publishing.
Thank you, Oliver. Well, the reason we've decided to do this deep dive, obviously, is the news that Pershing Square has just launched a $65 billion takeover bid for Universal Music Group. And I will go back to that. We'll get back to that at the end of our section. I thought the
reason was because the Ting Tings were about to go back on tour.
That was also on the list. And I like to go back deep into the archive. So our story today, Oliver, starts in 1887.
What?
I know, right? With the establishment of Columbia Records, which stands as the oldest surviving brand or music label. There was one before, which was Edison Records, created by Thomas Edison, who created recorded music, who invented recorded music. But Columbia introduced the 10-inch disc and double-sided records, and therefore we moved on at the time from wax cylinders. So thank you, Columbia, for that. In the 40 years after that, there was an expansion of the disc industry. By the early 20th century, labels, manufacturers distributed and promoted 78 RPM discs. Do you remember those?
Cool.
And the radio started, jukebox started, etc., etc. I've got a little interesting thing that happened in that time. In 1942, the American Federation of Musicians went on strike. And they went on strike for 2 years because at the time, the big labels, which were RCA Victor and Columbia, were refusing to pay royalties for radio plays. So they had royalties for recorded music, but not for radio plays. They went on strike for 2 years and they won. And that was the very first, it's sort of heralded as the first big strike around royalties. And they did well. They were allowed to record music during the strike for supporting the war effort. I'm sure you'll be happy to hear that because obviously this was during the Second World War. But the other interesting thing that happened in that time is in the 30s, there was that consolidation, that vertical consolidation that we've seen in other places. So RCA was originally a radio manufacturer, and it bought Victor, which was a music label, and CBS bought Columbia. So the whole content about, who's distributing and or creating the players also owns the content was very much born there. Anyway, let's move on to the 1950s as we progress through the history of music labels. The 1950s was very much about the big six, which have sort of become the big five now. massive labels who were global corporate juggernauts. This is going, from the 50s to the 80s. There were a few scandals in that period. I don't know if you've heard about the payola scandal in the US. Do you know about that? This was labels bribing DJs, radio DJs, because obviously at the time, the only way you would ever find out about new music was through radio play. And so there was a lot of bribery. And in 1960, there was a congressional investigation, and a few people got into a lot of trouble, including Alan Freed, who is the DJ who coined the term rock and roll. I hope you're admiring the number of factoids I'm dropping today.
I love it. You got 4. I'm counting 4, I think.
It is not, there'll be a few more. Other things that happened during that period, obviously Apple Records, you will all remember, that was created by the Beatles, who were trying to get away from EMI. It was sort of the beginning of the indie labels, or certainly the artist-owned labels. It did not have the best management, and it has a few problems, but it was an interesting new template, and definitely something, and it signed people like James Taylor. In parallel, in Detroit, also called the Motor City, the Motown label was created, and they basically were applying the automotive efficiency to music. It became an assembly line type of record making, and it was one of the first major indies because they were very, very focused on a certain sound, the Motown sound. And then in 1987, so a bit later, Bertelsmann, you will remember that, acquired RCA Records and created BMG, which became one of the big fives. So that takes us to the late 1980s, and I am now moving to the 90s. And what dominated the music label scene in the 1990s? This is a quiz for you, Oliver.
Well, you're not going to say CDs.
What was the structural? No, yeah. Well, obviously we all moved to CDs, but what was the structural change? If I say Alan McGee or Nirvana?
So Alan McGee, he discovered Oasis, and I stood next to him at a gig once, and he looked at me like I was an absolute piece of muck on his shoe. So is it A&R?
Oh, interesting. Well, that's not a good factoid. Indie labels really dominated the beginning of the 90s. It didn't really start with Nirvana, but Nirvana was very much the first massive success that came from. They were signed by Sub Pop, which was a tiny Seattle indie, for $600. And then they obviously became huge, and Nevermind became number one in 1992. And it proved it was the beginning of the indie sound, and that all the money that could be made. Oasis was 1993. As you said, Alan McGee discovered them at a gig. They'd sung one song. He was like, "I'm signing you," and then that became absolutely huge. But that was not all that was going on during the 1990s. At the same time, we had the most global success possibly of all time with, and I have to put this on because I love this story, Celine Dion. Celine Dion was signed by Sony, and they were like, "We're going to make you big everywhere." And they launched Let's Talk About Love in 1998 in Japan, and they sold 1.1 million units of that CD in Japan, in a market where it's quite rare for foreign acts to do quite so well. So, as much as the indie labels were coming up, there was also a dominance of major global acts. And there was this fantastic thing that happened to everybody who lived through the 90s, where every few years there was a new format and you had to reinvest your entire savings into buying your entire music library on a new format. So there were records, and then there were tapes, and then there were CDs, and then there were mini discs, etc. And every time you'd go, "Oh, but I need it. I need to have it in this new format." So that's also the story of the 90s, all those big labels just reissuing everything and making sure that everybody bought every single piece of music that they owned several times. Come 1999, and we talked about this a little bit in our deep dives about Spotify, Napster happened. And basically, the way that I would describe it is it completely decoupled the value of the music industry from the physical media. And that absolutely triggered a decade of financial devastations for the big labels. We've talked about some of these numbers, but global recorded music revenues went from 27 billion to 13 billion in 5 years, and that was essentially mostly piracy. There were some interesting moments. I don't know if anybody remembers Metallica. Lars Ulrich tried to sue Napster. That did not go down very well, and it was the sort of beginning of those old bands not really understanding the signs of the time, as it were. Finally, in 2009, the majors, which by then were fewer, and specifically Universal and Sony, partnered to launch Vivo. And that was a way for them to try and reclaim some of the revenues, specifically on YouTube. They also started partnering at the same time, as we've discussed, with Spotify. So took them a long time, but at some point the label said, we have to do something, we're disappearing. And so where we are now, sort of 2010, 2015 onwards, is that labels have completely decoupled from physical content. They are much more data-driven, sort of venture capital firms, as it were. They've changed their models quite thoroughly. We've gone back up. The global revenues reached $31.7 billion in 2025, which is actually the 11th consecutive year of growth after that big collapse. They are dominating the industry. So we have those three big labels. Universal Music, UMG, is 38% of the market, so a very dominant player. They have artists like Taylor Swift, they have artists like Drake, Billie Eilish, etc. Sony Music is second, 25%, Beyonce, Adele, Bad Bunny, and then Warner Music at 17%, a third player there, is Ed Sheeran, Bruno Mars, Cardi B, etc. Together, they hold essentially 80% of the music industry, which is enormous. What we're seeing a little bit is, we had the indies in the 90s. What we're seeing now is artists just opting for out of labels completely, feeling that they don't need labels in this world without any physical media, and they can do that directly. So Chance the Rapper, for instance, won 3 Grammys without a label deal. Ray, after was with Polydor and then decided to go completely independent for her new release. And Taylor Swift, I think we discussed that in a past podcast. She is signed with the UMG, with Universal, but her deal is a very specific deal because she keeps ownership of 100% of her masters, which obviously that's become the big fighting ground, the masters. So it has changed quite dramatically. I'm going to stop very soon and hand over to Maureen to talk about the future of the industry. But I will say that the business model of the labels has changed a lot. What used to happen is that labels would their role in the machine was to front the cost for recording, manufacturing, marketing, and distribution. So somebody had to to make all these discs and CDs, put them in boxes, create the artworks, send them to the shops, and collect the money. There was a real retailer's, job there. And they would then, recoup from artists' royalties. And that was a big gamble because 90% of releases flop. So it was very much a film industry kind of model where they would invest a lot of money up front and then hope for a few successes. It's quite different now. Now we're talking much more about a 360 deal where the label, in order to justify their work, will try to get money out of tours, merchandising, syncs, but their value is very much in pushing it in discovery, A&R, playlist curation, data analytics, pushing it on TikTok, licensing it to television, etc., etc. So it's a different business. And we're going to come back to Pershing Square and Bill Ackman, massive billionaire. He's tried to buy UMG a couple of years ago already and failed. He's gone back to it. He's made a huge offer, which is essentially a sort of twice the current value of the stock, on the basis that the stock is completely undervalued, the company is undermanaged, could do much better, and also needs to delist from Amsterdam and move to the New York Stock Exchange. And he wants to get it away from Vincent Bolloré, who is its main shareholder at the moment, a very controversial figure in France, not dissimilar in its scale to Rupert Murdoch, very right-leaning, it's got quite a lot of interesting stories around him. So Ackman's point is this would be better for everybody. We could bring it back to the US. This USA first, that's where it should be. And also we get rid of the undervaluation that's linked to some extent to the Amsterdam listing and to some extent to Bolloré. So that's where I am with music recording. I'm going to hand over to Maureen now. Any questions?
Any questions? Wow. I'm going to take a deep breath, and I want to come at this slightly different angle. But I love your jump off point. So because when I look at Bill Ackman's move on Universal Music Group, my first instinct is not to marvel really at the valuation and or the structure and or the backing, because I think I want to ask a simple question: is there actually a seller here? Is it up for sale? So Ackman's proposal, as you rightly say, is out there at $64 billion, which is a significant amount of money. And the core argument is not that Universal is misunderstood because the business is weak. Is, as you say, Ackman has always tried to get it relisted in New York and in the US because he believes that the stock has never really received in Europe the valuation multiple that it deserves, that it would obviously command in the US market. Now you can challenge that, who knows? So he's always wanted a New York listing for some time. And, this deal would effectively force that question in the boardroom. So for me, though, the real issue is, clever structure is one thing, but getting the key shareholder to engage is another. And I think that makes it so interesting. But I think the loud story, really loud, is the bid because of the valuation. The more interesting story, the more quieter story, is the business underneath it. As you've said, for 10 plus years now, the market itself is growing, it's stabilizing, it's really getting its act together. And I think for a while, the attention has really gone at UMG to the ownership and the listing geography. But the music business is stabilizing. And in some areas, I think actually is strengthening. So we've got, as you've thrown out those numbers, global recorded music revenues it really has grown in the last year. And it's not just one or two obvious markets. This is global. And it's a genuine global business with real resilience underneath. And then you have AI. So for the last 2 years, the dominant story was litigation and fear. Okay, and the labels were going after Suno, Udio, and anyone that claimed to be able to create generatively music. And those two were the more prominent ones. And so labels and rights holders now, I think, have been trying to stop the generative music companies from training on their copyrighted works without their permission. But what's happening now is much more nuanced. The majors are not retreating. They are front foot first, and they're starting to turn the legal leverage into licensing leverage. And I think that's powerful. So rather than trying to litigate these music systems out of existence, they're partnering with them and they're settling with them, and they're trying to shape the commercial terms under which they exist. So UMG and Warner clearly have settled quite appropriately, I think, with Suno and Udio for artists to opt in. So I think my read overall, because your history is absolutely amazing, is whether Ackman gets this done or not. Now, the bigger point is that Universal is still sitting on a very, very, very strong underlying asset. So the question is less about the music business is broken, because it's not. The stats are there. And I think it's more about whether the public markets are valuing it correctly. And I think that's a different story. And that's where management and the board will probably spend most of their time. So loved your history. I mean, there were a couple of excellent factoids. I loved it. I loved the fact you went back to the 19th century. This is extraordinary.
It might be our first one where we go back that far.
Exactly. But I'm very much on the bear side of this. I don't think Ackman's going to pull it off. I don't think a deal will be done. But I do believe it brings the attention to the situation. And perhaps maybe he gets his way in terms of a US listing. But no, the underlying asset is too strong for, I think, him to be given a road and a pathway to acquiring the business.
It's true as well that Universal in particular, I mean Warner's as well as you said, but Universal in particular has started really to lean into AI and invest, and has done some very interesting deals, and you can see that they've changed their approach to it dramatically over the last, I would say, 18 months. So that's it'll be an interesting thing to look at.
Very strong, and I think they've probably been probably the bravest of all the different subsectors of the media market.
I'd agree.
Say, let's not spend time with lawyers litigating because it's going to take forever, and instead let's get them in the room. Let's do the commercial terms on our terms, and let's get opt-in artists sort of situation right. Now, of course, independent labels or independent artists may not necessarily have a say in those negotiations, but nonetheless, I think the major labels are doing the right thing. And I think actually the other sectors, the big studios, film, TV, books, publishers, education establishments, business services, they are going to be looking to the music industry to say, actually, we probably do have more leverage than we think in these negotiations with these AI native companies. And I think they will. So I applaud Warner, Universal, BMG for really moving forward, and Sony still litigating, though. That's a problem. Sony's still litigating. I think it's Suno. Yeah, still litigating there. But, who knows? Who knows where that will pan out. But yeah, great stuff.
Well, dear listener, you've hit the jackpot there. You've had Claire Facts and Maureen Predictions, which is the two biggies. So we'll be keeping an eyeball on that prediction. But yeah, Claire, you know it. You had the facts. You had the feeling of a stand-up comedian who's got 4 killer lines as you went through that, knowing that you were going to be open-mouthed at those revelations. Edison, I forgot about him. And that Columbia thing was great. And also, just as a marker of how old I am, my first record player that my dad gave me had settings for 7-inch, 18-inch and 10-inch. And speed settings, at 45 and 75, 32 and 16. Which 16 RPM, which I don't think was a thing, but it shows how old we are. And even when I was at university, I was doing DJing, and we still got sent.
Is that reversing? Is that just basically reversing so you can hear? It's turning in the opposite direction.
That's really weird. Can I tell you?
It's going so slow.
Can I tell you a story about my grandfather when he was young? So we're talking early 20th century, obviously. He bought, at the time, they were quite rare, even then, those big 78, records. He would go into a cafe in Paris. He would buy one, go into a cafe, and then look at it and then move his head around like this, pretending that he was reading it. And because so few people had a record player, they actually thought that if you knew how to do it, you could read the music just by looking at it.
Just for a prank.
That's the best story.
As a prank.
What a story.
That's the best story of the week.
It's really good.
That's a Peter Sellers. That's a Peter Sellers moment.
It's so funny. Anyways.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Anyway, we must move on.
Now, I was just saying, when I was a DJ, we had records, and they still sent us records in. I was a DJ at university.
Yeah, I had records.
That almost unlistenable record.
I was a radio DJ at university too.
Were you really?
Look at that!
Really?
You guys are so cool. Okay, all right. We'll have to do a DJ competition one day.
Let's get on with it. Let's get on with it, Oliver.
Let's move on. Let's move on. That's my job to move on. So of course, that was a classic deep dive. That'll go down in the archives. But now, as usual, and there's certainly things to talk about in the news. So, Maureen Kerr, roving reporter, is OpenAI HQ. That's where she's standing there in the warm summer, early spring sun. With the news, of course, everybody knows that they've closed Sora, but done other things as well. Maureen, what's the story?
Yeah, and if we fast forward to June of 2027, I think that's when they'll actually be in London at their headquarters. They are opening an office in London, but at the moment they're still in San Francisco, or Palo Alto. And so in San Francisco. So anyway, 2 different activities. OpenAI this particular month of March, end of March, April, tells you something about, I think, where the company's going and their next phase. So firstly, as you say, Oliver, OpenAI decided to shutter Sora web and app experiences. So that will be discontinued this month with their API later in September. And we all know that Sora was a video generation tool. They had Sora and a Sora 2, very much a sort of supposed to be a consumer video generation tool. Enterprises also were able to use it, but nonetheless, it is winding down. One of probably the most visible creative consumer product, but others have overtaken it. VO, you have C-Dance coming in from China and the like, so been displaced. But at the same moment it announced that it was closing this video generation consumer tool, it then announced an acquisition, which is fascinating. So it then acquired what is the founder-led technology talk show of I think it has probably global, probably more US audience, but it's a talk show hosted by two guys, John Coogan and Geordie Hayes, and it's named TBPN, the Technology Business Programming Network, which effectively is a daily 3 hours. We think we have it tough to do an hour.
Can you imagine?
Hour,
Daily?
But Claire, it's live as well. So they have their.
It's almost like they're recreating television, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. They exactly. They put their feet up on the table. They look at the news. They look at Bloomberg. They look at there, and then they start chatting. But more importantly, they have some really interesting guys and usually guys that come on to the show. So they've had Mark Zuckerberg, they have Satya Nadella, and of course Sam Altman as well himself. Now this business is generated probably about 5 million in ad revenue. So it's an ad-funded podcast in its first year, but probably has now, because it's a couple of years old now, probably up to about 30 million a year. And OpenAI did not disclose the price that they paid for this podcast. It's a podcast. I think the FT, the Financial Times, says and reckons it's probably valued in the low hundreds of millions. But anyway, OpenAI says that the goal of this acquisition, the reason for this acquisition, is to accelerate the public conversation around AI. So what makes that especially interesting is where the deal is going to sit internally at OpenAI. Now, there's a guy called Chris Lahane who oversees the global affairs at OpenAI. He's a veteran political and communication strategist.
Let's just be clear for our audience. Global affairs means lobbying.
You said it, Claire. I didn't. So they basically, TPBN will now report into him. So that suggests OpenAI is not just buying a content podcast. It's buying a more strategic position in the conversation around AI, policy. Did we say policy? And power. So you can read a couple of things in these two moves, and I'll stop in a minute, which I think are quite contradictory. So they shut down the flashy video product. They buy the busy buzzy, because Emily gave me this inspiration for the messy one. So the busy buzzy media property, but I think there is a colder interpretation here. I think this is less about entertainment than influence, and at this stage I think OpenAI may care less about owning a speculative consumer video app called Sora than they are about owning one of the room, and it's a really influential room where people talk about AI, people talk about markets, people talk about policy, and people talk about power. So I think it's a fascinating set of moves, contradictory moves, that we saw this month with OpenAI. And here end the news report.
And I have very little to add to your fantastic demonstration. I do think it's very much a refocus. I mean, Sora was costing them $50 million a day. So, they have the money, but it's very, very costly. And it was a distraction. And they were seeing Anthropic, they were seeing Gemini really sort of eat their lunch. And they decided that they needed to refocus very much around agentic AI, around productivity, around revenues. And remember, they're preparing for an IPO at some point. So I think those two move in the light of we want to go public make a lot of sense. So I was, they look like they mean that they're going to be very much focused on what makes money and on influencing the public agenda. As you say, I won't say lobbying again.
And also, Claire, I think they are quite legitimately moving across into robotics as well. And I think,
fair enough.
If you saw side by side, Google VO, Sea Dance, Kling, and Sora 2, you were struggling really with the Sora 2. At Sea Dance, every producer that I meet, every videographer that I meet is using either Sea Dance, legitimately or not, provenance questionable, but they love the VO as well, the Google VO3 in particular. So so
it's a story about businesses wanting money and influence. You heard it here first. Thank you, Maureen. Classic. Second one down. Right. So this is Claire's at Paramount Towers, let's call it. And we have more on the Paramount WB merger. And I was like, oh, this again. But then in the notes, I saw scandal. What's going on, Claire?
Yes, well, a lot of things are going on, actually. There's a sort of escalation on all levels around this merger. There's lots of news, and you can see that people are trying to, again, own the news agenda for their own, I won't say evil means, but, there's definitely a lot of PR going on.
Anyway, on this one.
Lawyers
are going to have to run through all the copy on this.
Let me tell you what's going on. First of all, we have the Paramount leadership shakeup. So Jeff Shell, who was the president of Paramount, has stepped down as of early April after a high-profile lawsuit and internal fallout. He was suing Mr. Cipriani, who was a Las Vegas-based gambler and fixer, while Mr. Cipriani, RJ Cipriani, countersued, saying that Shell had leaked confidential corporate information. Not very nice at a moment where you're trying to get regulatory approval. But the interesting thing is, this is the second time Jeff Shell was fired. The first time was for having a lover in the company, and he was fired for sexual harassment in the workplace. So this is just a bit messy, and not, although the Paramount has said that he definitely wasn't fired. It was absolutely a resignation, and there was definitely no securities law violation. It's just messy. So that they will not have been very happy with that headline at this very crucial moment. Meanwhile, more than 1,000 actors, writers, and directors in Hollywood have signed an open letter opposing the merger, which is interesting because if you remember, I've started speaking really fast now. If you remember, they were very much against Netflix buying WD, and now they're also against Paramount buying WD. But they're saying that they're not wrong, that it will further concentrate Hollywood. They said that it will leave creators with fewer jobs, less choice for audiences, etc. Everybody and their dog has signed. Jane Fonda, Emma Thompson, Bryan Cranston, Joaquin Phoenix, Ben Stiller, just, you name them. They were all in there. Meanwhile, there's a lot of congressional hearings going on because of the competition regulation, and David Ellison keeps not showing up. And the last time he missed the day at the Senate to testify at an antitrust subcommittee. He said that it was a death in the family, which obviously is it's a valid excuse, but it's the second time in a very short amount of time that he misses those congressional hearings. That doesn't play very well in Washington at a moment where these regulatory approval are pretty crucial. In the meantime, they are also going all out, pushing the fact that they are not giving up on theatrical release, because that's one of the things that people are worried about, that there won't be any movies released into theaters anymore. And they have committed to releasing 15 films a year from each studio, Paramount and WD. So that's at least 30 theatrical releases annually with a 45-day theatrical window. So that's that they were hoping clearly that this would be a very strong signal to the market, and one that might placate some of the critics of the deal, but it doesn't look like it was enough. So this is now entirely about regulation. It's about whether the regulators are going to see it as a creative scale play or a dangerous consolidation of power. There's the industry pushback, there's Shell's exit, there's Ellison not showing up. This makes the whole deal look much more fraught than it did perhaps a few weeks ago. So I don't know, Maureen, what did you think? It was all edge of the seat kind of thing.
And Claire, I can add one more thing to your long list.
No, I missed one.
Yes, you have missed one. And then there is the David Zaslav payout.
Oh, that's true. I have
that. My turn. The Institutional Shareholder Services Company, which is called the ISS, which is, for our listeners, is one of the most influential proxy advisory firms in the world. Effectively, they pull all the paperwork together and they do the vetting. So for Warner Brothers Discovery's board, okay, now, and also I think Glass Lewis has also been recommending the shareholders as well. So effectively, they're saying vote against the gold. We call this a golden parachute for David Zaslav. So when for Warner Brothers Discovery's own SEC filings, we see a value of David Zaslav's golden parachute, so the payout that he gets, which has been grossed up to around $868 million. So if you take out that, it's probably $550 million. And the ISS, so the Institutional Shareholder Services, has called this one of the highest golden parachute estimates ever in their history observed. So the shareholder vote is going to be on April 23rd, and it is advisory only, but the board can proceed regardless. But nonetheless, that is also added to the list of the...
But they do recommend, the ISS does recommend to vote in favor of the merger, but against the global parachute. So they're not pushing back against the merger.
No. My point was adding only other issues.
Drama. Yeah.
Drama. So you have 1,400 creatives signing the letters. You have editors raising alarms. You've got the number 2 executive out under a cloud. You've got a departing CEO in line for one of the largest exit packages in media history, and every new constituency that opposes this deal adds another timetable risk. So the surface area keeps expanding. Is extraordinary. We'll be talking about this for a long time, Claire.
It's a story, and let me tell you, Maureen, it's a story that will run and run.
Couldn't have put it better myself. Absolutely.
You've got to get that cliche in there. You've got to get it in there.
Yeah. That was great. Goodness me. And well done, Maureen, for acting as a safety net, if you like, get all the facts in on that story. That's very much. We have to move on now to our final story, which is not one of those cuddly ones that they used to have on the news at 10 with like a puppy being rescued from Salisbury Plain. No, it's about microdramas. We have an update. We talked about these before, Maureen. Tell us more.
Yeah, and so I'll be really quick as well. So microdramas really continues to pique my interest, and I know Claire at the moment is sitting on the fence, but you never know. I may convince her to jump over and join me in the glee of what's been happening. So I'm going to give you factual stuff as well. I might park the opinion for later, for another time. So anyway, this week, Issa Rae's production company, Hooray Media, committed to co-developing multiple micro series with TikTok, launching exclusively on TikTok and Pine Drama. Now, Issa Rae, for anyone who doesn't really know her, she is a creator and a star of HBO's Insecure, one of the most critically acclaimed comedy drama series of the last decade, in my view, and in everyone else's view. And she's also founder of the Hooray Media production company that's become probably one of the more credible independent voices in American television. Amazing. But this is a production partnership from someone who really doesn't need the money or the exposure. It is, in my view, it's a signal about where serious talent is seeing where the different formats are going, and she's jumping in headline and sinker. So that was really interesting fact for the week. And if you want a sense of what is actually pulling the audience in and attracting the talent, we're talking about titles like, I love this, My Unwanted Billionaire, X, Return of the Divorced Heiress, and Love at First Bite, which racked up 18 million views on Pine Drama alone in its first weeks. These are not prestige titles, of course, but they are engineered for retention. Every episode ends with a cliffhanger. Every scene is shot in a close-up, and the plots move at a pace that makes a soap opera look, contemplative. At the same time, Netflix Latam has said, I'm drawing a line, an explicit line this week. We'll do short episodes, yes, but we're not doing vertical format, no. And Ubisoft also, which owns Assassin's Creed and Far Cry, has confirmed also that it's tracking the market, but will not enter either, given that we know there's a backdrop of gaming companies, jumping into the fray. So the stated reason there was content quality is not there yet. So anyway, also the genre mapping is also, this is my last statement here, the genre map is also widening. Romance and revenge still dominates, as we can see, ex-billionaire wives, ruthless CEOs, reincarnated rivals, secret billionaires and all that stuff, but horror, thriller and faith-based verticals are all now in active development. So when a format starts generating genre breakdowns, in my view, but we need to ask Claire about this, it has stopped being a novelty, in my view, and it's starting to be a bit of an industry. So in 1 week, you have a prestige TV creator going all in. You've got a major streamer holding its line and a gaming giant with $1 billion IP library watching on the sidelines. So that's exactly what a market in transition looks like, in my view. So the first vertical drama Love Fan Awards is also happening, April 23rd. I think that's the same time that the shareholders are voting.
Yeah. Busy day.
Busy day in Los Angeles. So this is entirely decided by popular vote. Popular vote, no industry jury. It will be fan awards for microdramas. We're now fully in the legitimized phase now because we've got an awards ceremony. Claire, over to you.
I mean, I produced the Cat Video Awards ceremony for the internet. So you can have an award ceremony and not necessarily as legitimate. I hear you. Listen, I hear you. I think your genre point is very well made. Once you've moved into this genre, you get the scale. You don't necessarily get the legitimacy as the romance novel industry, but you do get the money and you get the scale. We won't spend a lot of time on this. I thought it was interesting to talk about Quibi Brilliant. Do you remember Quibi?
Yes.
Which launched to great acclaim 6 years ago, and then crashed and burned very, very rapidly. And I think it's interesting to compare those because Quibi tried to do a walled garden, whereas microdramas are built on shareability and they're built on being where the people already are and where the content is being consumed. And I do think you're right that gives them a huge lead up and makes them much, much easier. And it's much more of an organic growth than this sort of, let me tell you what you really, really need. And then, you'll have to listen to me. So, I'm reserving my judgment. I'm still slightly more, I'm not quite as enthusiastic as you are, but I agree that the signs are definitely pointing in the right direction. So we'll keep having a look.
Artistically and business-wise, it would seem. So there we go. That's the future of microdramas, and it's looking rosy, according to the Media Beat. And that ends in the news. Okay, we've got to move on. There's been so much packed into this one and still more to go. Let's go with the Podmojis. We got 3 of them. First one, we sort of have to really. It's Ye, formerly Kanye, formerly, I can't remember what it was before that. Anyway, someone who is, his first 2 albums, surprisingly good actually, which is annoying. And the Wireless Festival has been brought down by the fact that Ye won't be there. What's the Podmoji? Let's go with Claire.
Okay, I'm going to be really quick. I think everybody's heard of all of this. Huge new album, 2 sold out US stage, but then denied entry in the UK government for reasons that, are quite strong as well. I'm going to go with I'm going with the 6-7. This is a 6-7 Podmoji.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it's one of half of one and
6 of one, half a dozen of another.
6 of one, half of the thank you very much for that, Oliver. I've lost that one. So it's exactly what it is. It's a good news, bad news kind of week for Ye. We'll see how that goes. I have no idea where that's going.
Okay, more.
And I would agree as well. So I'm going to go for it was on and then it was no.
Oh, very nice.
And no.
Yeah, very good.
No. And that's all we
That
need
was
to
good.
say.
That's 100 points. 100 points right there. Okay, good. Well done. Moving on. Another person who makes you go, oh, although we are not a political podcast, so let's not say that. But Donald Trump and the NFL. Maureen.
Okay, so DOJ is looking into, we have to be really fast, DOJ is looking into whether the NFL is legitimately selling media rights appropriately, and or the consumers really have to either be hedge fund managers because they need loads of money, have so many subscriptions, they need to find out where the sports that they love, where it is. So discovery is a real issue. But the most entertaining part of this is very much Donald Trump, and we're being factual here, tried to buy various teams in the NFL and didn't buy them, bought one in particular, then tried to sue the NFL, got some money but didn't cash a check. So really weird. So I'm going to do the same thing. It was a no to Donald Trump, on to Donald Trump. And there's a check. There's a check in his drawer somewhere that he's not cashed.
Very nice. So yeah, good back reference there to the previous one. Another 100 points. It could be 100 points there. Claire?
Yeah, this is a very weird one. Yes, of course, the price of sports rights are huge. We've talked about this, but actually, most of the NFL's games are still available on free-to-air broadcast channels. So it's much harder and more expensive to access other sports. So of all of the battles to pick, this one seems slightly odd. I'm going with a football metaphor. I'm slightly worried about this one. I'm going to kick that one into touch. Can I say that?
People understand football. Bit more rugby, but I know they say touch. Perfect. They say touch in football as well. Not very visual, but 100 points. Thank you. And finally, you have
to give me extra points for a sports metaphor. I think.
I'm sorry. I will not be influenced. I will not be influenced by the competitors. 50 points off your total. Trying to influence the referee. Terrible, not like you. But I'll stick with you, Claire, anyway. BTS. BTS, are they the popular combo from Korea with too many children in it?
They are the biggest K-pop act, and right now, the biggest act on the planet. They went away a few years ago because they had to do their military service. All of the young kids, guys who are on BTS, quite right too. Yeah. And they did. They didn't try to get out of it. This is not something you do in South Korea. They just went off and they did it. But now they're back, and they've launched their comeback album called Arirang. Which has been, as one would expect, absolutely massive. In parallel, they did a free concert in Seoul, which was also streamed live on Netflix. And also they've got a new documentary coming out on Netflix as well. So they are the biggest thing ever. Again, but I think what's really interesting is how much, and they've always done that, BTS, to be honest, even in their earlier incarnation. There's very much a sort of transmedia narrative. All of it is around the same narrative. You know, it's a story about resilience and return and longing, and they have that through the songs, through the album, through the concert visual, which had like holograms. And people had, an app on their phone, and they were it was just a beautiful thing. And the documentary, continues on that line as well. I think it's a very, very well done experience. And I think I haven't actually listened to it, but I'm sure it's a very good album as well. So well done, KPS. I don't know. I feel like I'm a KPS, sorry. I'm a BTS army. BTS army.
Oh, exactly. I absolutely think it's a wonderful thing. Military service. Yeah. I'd like to see Harry Styles with a rifle in his hand. I think it'll be bloody good for them. So that's great. I just looked at the 7 of them. That's more than Earth, Wind and Fire. That's good. Very good. 100 points. Maureen, finally, over to you, BTS.
Yeah, BTS. If I was in the audience, I would have been going,
That O is getting a lot of work.
It's getting a lot of work. Sweat equity. This is sweat equity.
Excellent. Oh, and that's it. Right, good. Just a noise. No, that's absolutely fine. 100 points. Well done. So, totaling it up.
Oh no, Maureen's going to win.
Well, including your fine.
it
But then
it.
again, you
Your-
did do the football
your
metaphor.
football-
So, I'm sorry.
Your
This
football
is
metaphor
difficult
gets
maths.
at least 1,000 points.
Yeah, exactly. So, overall,
Yeah.
it's 1,001 points. It's a draw, actually. 1,001 points each. Yeah. So, congratulations. That was quite good. Very complicated maths because there's all sorts of disputes and talking back, which, of course, we won't have on the media beat.
Remember, at one point we had red cards and yellow cards. You have to
I
pull
was
them
about to
back.
say, you could have got a referee could have got the yellow card out for Claire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I always.
And me
There we go,
using
yeah.
the letter O too many times.
Yeah.
Red
that's
card. Oh,
right,
you
that's
went
what
straight
we
for
are.
the red card, though. That's, oh, yeah.
I'm brandishing them just as an example, but I've
Yeah.
got two
Yeah.
other colours as well, which I've.
Look at that.
I don't know what to
We
do.
finished within a lot of time. Look at that.
We did, and we managed it. We sped up. We did it just by getting Claire to talk faster. I've got so many words to get in, so I'm going to get them all in. But I think it was great, very rich. It's very rich content, I'd say. But we have to go. That's it, I'm afraid. So what a great one. The music one lived up to my expectation and told me things I didn't know. It was great. So it only remains for me to say goodbye and thank you, Maureen.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Claire, and goodbye to the audience.
And thank you so much, Claire. See you soon.
Thank you very much to both of you and to the audience. And happy anniversary to us. 4 years.
Bon anniversaire. 4 years of the Media Beat. And they said it wouldn't last, probably. I think nobody said that at the time.
I don't remember anyone saying that.
No, actually,
I mean, I don't think anybody knew to say it because nobody knew where we were. But yes, if they'd seen us, they might have said it.
They might, yes, that's exactly right. If they'd seen us, they might have said it won't last. But now they're saying, probably they're going to make the century. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please comms with us on our very vibrant LinkedIn page. And we'll see you on the next one. But for now, bye-bye.